can't feel my face. Coffee spilling all over the place. Forgot the sticks, we're turning around. Another weekend in some hockey town. With a pucked up parents, frozen toes, big hearts, bad luck. With a pucked up parents, one more tourney, one more puck. We're broke, we're loud, we love this grind. Cause our kid just scored and we lost our minds.
Greetings and welcome to Pucked Up Parents. We're at episode number 34 in the dead heat, middle of summer, kind of the in between. We're waiting for hockey season, should start cranking next month. I am Michael, your host. With me, as always, is Angela. Angela, how are you?
Good. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Pucked Up Parents. Michael and I are the parents of two hockey players. We are novice first generation hockey parents in a non traditional hockey town, and here to talk to you about everything we've learned and are still learning about youth hockey.
We're 12 years into it. We're about to flip that number to 13. Once the new season starts, we'll flip the number to season 2 of Pucked Up Parents, and we will be at 13 years. So, as we do every week, let's talk about what happened in hockey last week for us. Again, off season, just kind of bouncing around. Hockey's sort of in our lives. What did we have, Angela?
As you mentioned, it's the heat of the summer. There's not a whole lot going on with hockey. Our oldest son is still playing in the rec league slash beer league. We've got a little 3v3 action going once a week. Some coaches ice, which is just kind of the coach going out with a handful of players here and there, almost for an open ice kind of thing. But honestly, it's so hot outside, I can barely think about hockey.
Yeah, I took the 12-year-old to the 3-on-3 last night. Of course, all the hockey dads were there with their backwards hats on, arms crossed, watching their kids play. Me, I dropped the kid off and then tip my hat and walk out and go for a run in this heat. So while he stays on the ice in the cold, I'm out running a few miles in the hot weather, and I come back to the rink drenched, and it feels so good when you walk in that ice. I just take a little lap around the ice rink just to cool off quickly. I know it's probably not good for my health to go from extreme heat to freezing cold, especially with wet clothes on, wet clothes on. But man, it is nice.
I mean, there are athletes that do ice baths after their workouts. So, I mean, it's kind of in the same ballpark.
Did you hear that, everybody? She just called me an athlete. I'm
No, I said there are some athletes. I didn't say you were an athlete.
all
I'm
right.
just saying you're going out for a jog and then walking into an ice rink is probably on the same level as an athlete doing a heavy workout and then getting in an ice bath.
I'm
Yeah,
aware.
they're similar.
I'm aware. I'm an athlete. So
Okay. Yeah.
let's talk about last week's episode. What did we do last week?
We had a fantastic interview with our friend Chris Holmes, who is a hockey dad, a hockey coach, and founder of the Queen City Hockey Expo in Buffalo, New York.
Let's give him a little plug, Chris Holmes. It was a great interview. Go back and listen to it. He had some good insight about being a dad, a goalie dad, a coach, working with kids. And then, of course, we picked his brain about this hockey expo in Buffalo, New York, the only hockey expo in Buffalo, New York. And just to give him a quick plug here, it's happening August 9th, 2026 at the Buffalo Riverworks in Buffalo, New York from 12 o'clock to 5 o'clock. So if you find your way into Buffalo, New York area, Niagara Falls area, drop in there on August 9th. And like I said last week, unlike everything else in hockey, the admission is free, and they also do gear exchanges. There's going to be vendors there, so sounds like a good time. A little too far for Angela and I to be there, but there will be a little wink and a nod to the pucked up parents because we did send off some stuff to give away to the attendees. So Angela, let's drill into the day's topic. And I actually came up with this one, and you know what inspired me on this one, Angela?
What inspired
The
you?
World Cup and all those amazing injuries these guys are having, that they look like they, were hit by a truck, an invisible truck, and they're rolling on the ground, and then they pop right up and go back to playing. So, what are we talking about today? Not flopping, but
Hockey injuries. Unlike some of the players at the World Cup who do some pretty fantastic flopping, hockey players are not exactly known for flopping. They're known for playing through injuries and being pretty tough. So, we're going to talk about some of those injuries that we're going to see more on the youth side of things, not the crazy stuff you see sometimes in the NHL or some of those things that you see on TV.
Yeah, you see you see the YouTube videos. It's the guy on the bench. He pulls a tooth out, hands it to a coach, and then gets back onto the ice playing, or goes off ice, gets stitched up, and then comes back out and plays. So yeah, we're going to be more focused here on youth hockey injuries. Maybe some seriousness to this episode because there are some serious injuries that do occur on the ice. So Angela, what the puck am I doing? Let's talk about injuries. What do you got?
It happens. Hockey is what I would call a collision sport. It's not even a contact sport. It is intentional collisions. A sport played at high speed on ice with blades on your feet. You're going to increase your speed with the skating more than somebody just running and running into each other. Speed comes into play as well as the ice itself. You're going to have falls, hits, slashes, collisions with the boards, with the net, with other players. All kinds of stuff can happen. So, lots and lots of what we'll call bumps and bruises.
A lot of unforgiving surfaces, unforgiving solid objects associated with ice rinks. The ice, it's hard. It's unforgiving if you fall down. I trust me, I've fallen down a few times on ice, skating on the few times I've ever ice skated. The walls are not forgiving. The puck, it's basically frozen rubber, vulcanized rubber. It's painful. A fiberglass stick hurts. They made the goalie nets. They don't wrap them in pool noodles. They're pipes, metal
They're steel, metal steel.
pipes. There's gaps where the, Zamboni doors, we talked about that on our rink episode, and then you're strapping little knives on your legs and, slipping. You're basically sliding across the ice as fast as you can. It explains why we have all this gear, we'll get to that. So, physical injuries. Of course, there's other types of injuries, but let's get to the physical injury, the minor, the majors. Angela, I think we have minors first. What's our
Uh,
most popular minor injuries? Most popular?
so,
What's
things like
our favorite minor injury, Angela?
favorite minor injury? I mean, there's all of the things like you mentioned getting hit with a puck. How many times have we seen our kids who both play defense come home and they got hit with a puck in some random area that wasn't covered by a pad, be it a forearm, the back of the upper arm, somewhere they get hit with a puck and they've got a giant circle bruise on them somewhere from getting nailed with a puck.
Yeah, that it is true. The puck is frozen, it's flying, it hurts. They're clearing the puck, it's riding down the boards or an errant pass or even a shot. We've seen it, player again, I'll go back to the World Cup. You see the World Cup when they line up for these penalty shots and the dudes are, basically I say dudes, so we're talking about the men's cup, obviously. They're standing out there with the little arms crossed over their junk and they're all squeamish looking. I mean, in high school hockey, how many times have we seen our kid just throw himself in front of a shot, like no protection, just sacrificing his body to prevent it from even getting to the net? I mean, great, there's a goalie sitting in the net that's supposed to block that shot, but let's put a second layer of protection on and just fling our 6'5" frame across the ice to stop a puck.
You say no protection, but he is wearing full hockey gear, but it's still less than what the goalie's wearing. So, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think we had a broken shin pad a couple of years ago from a puck from a shot. So it happens. It was just a cracked shin pad, but still, that just tells you the velocity of the puck. And thankfully, that shin pad was there. Otherwise, that could have been a more significant injury.
I know we're going to talk about this shortly, but this is where importance of sizing of your equipment comes into play because I tell you, I did Sam's graduation photos, which included slideshows of his hockey, and you can see the equipment like there's his wrist. Oh, it's showing it. Yeah, I can see his wrist. That's puck targeting. Oh, there's his neck is exposed, or that helmet's pushed back a little bit. Any exposed skin. I mean, yes, they have equipment. Yes, it's going to protect you, but so is my seatbelt in my car and my airbag that I ain't driving 140 down the road, hoping to get home okay. I'm taking safety precautions, so it's dangerous, but you do take precautions.
Right. And that's where all that equipment comes in. But like you mentioned, there are areas that are not covered by pads, and that's typically where you get those bumps and bruises. Another big one is a slash. You take that fiberglass stick and you get slashed, and it's over, say, the forearm that's between the glove and the elbow pad. Guess who's coming home with a bruise?
This is your goons in the older ages, and then you see a lot of, like, temperamental little kids will do this when they get angry at a game. They'll take that stick and just whack it across the, opposing player and ultimately injure them because there's that little gap and you know what fits perfectly in that little gap? A hockey stick does. So, especially a hockey
Right.
stick, coming down fast. So, yeah, to Angela's point, that wrist is exposed, and we'll get to a wrist story a little bit later. What about falls on the ice? Now, I've not seen a lot of injuries of falls on the ice. I mean, it's more of like hitting into the boards, but just eating it. We talked with our ref about eating it, but you don't, especially as they get more developed. I'm sure as younger kids learn to play, they fall down a lot. They're not falling far because they're tiny, but the bigger kids, when they eat it, that's gonna get your minor you're gonna get your bruises, you're gonna get your deep bruises, and maybe a little, recoup time after that.
Right, and I don't think it's necessarily just falling on the ice, it's in those collisions. They've either just taken a check or just checked somebody and then they go down. That's where you're gonna see some of that with the older kids, but the little ones for sure that are still really learning the skating, they are going to fall and fall a lot. Thankfully, they've got that equipment. They're mostly covered up, but there's definitely going to be some bumps and bruises from falling on the ice, especially if they're going out to, say, just a regular skate and they're not in full equipment. I think when our kids were little, we went to just a public skate and one of them fell down and was like, oh my gosh, without all of the padding, it actually kind of hurts to fall down.
And this is where we talk about the importance of the gear. I mean, geez, if you don't think your kid needs to wear protective gear or effective protective gear, then just go ahead and switch this podcast off and take your kid out of hockey because it's so important. And as we get to the more injuries, the more substantial injuries, you're going to understand why. Just like a seatbelt, yeah, you could still get injured, but it is helping to lessen the severity of that injury. Now, let's talk about the standard hockey cliche injury. Of course, I'm talking about the teeth. You see it, you see the stupid pictures of every hockey player's got the gap in their teeth, or they got the little retainer with the fake tooth. This is very, very cliche, and it's really you're riding that line, especially as younger kids grow up, of are they baby teeth? Are they real teeth? Not real teeth, adult teeth. And then, of course, that brings us in. We'll get to protective equipment for the teeth later on, but yeah, the teeth, Angela.
Right. So I think you're right. There is that old cliche of hockey players missing teeth. But our youth players are wearing, and I'll go ahead and get into it, they're wearing a mouth guard. They're all
They
supposed to be
are
wearing a
they?
mouth guard.
Thank you.
Again, they're all supposed to be wearing a mouth guard, which is going to protect and try to prevent some of those chipped and broken teeth and knocked out teeth. But of course, you mentioned too the younger kids who are still in that process of losing their baby teeth. Maybe they've already got a loose tooth and they get knocked down playing hockey and that baby tooth comes out. The younger kids are also wearing a cage. They're not going to get hit in the face with a puck like a professional hockey player would.
But I think they would be gritting their teeth, right? I mean, if you're out there skating around like, "Grr," it puts pressure on your teeth and you fall down and your chin could still hit something, right? I mean, you can still chin into the boards, you can still chin into the ground or chin I mean, I don't know. I've not ever ran into
If
somebody.
you're wearing your hockey helmet and your mask properly, you've got padding on your chin. Unfortunately, some of the kids think that wearing their mask pretty loose is fashionable and leave that chin pad a little looser than it should be. So they're leaving themselves open to more of those chin and teeth injuries.
I'll add on to that teeth injury, it's fashionable. They also take that stupid mouth guard and chew it like it's gum. You see it in football, you see it on the rink, you'll see like, "What is that green stuff hanging out of Sam's lip?" Well, he's chewing on his mouth guard. That's not gonna save anything.
Yeah, right. So there's all of that. So
And
encourage your
yes,
kids to
you
get
ever
used.
have you ever chipped a tooth?
Have I chipped a tooth?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
right here.
she's showing
You've
me.
never noticed?
No, I've never noticed. How'd you do it?
So I was wearing a necklace that had kind of a heavy pendant on it, and I was jumping on a trampoline, and the pendant came up and smacked me in the face.
Okay, Angela needs a cooler story than a trampoline and the accident. Yeah, I've chipped my tooth. Mine was a champagne bottle, New Year's 2000. My cousin jammed a champagne bottle in my mouth, and it chipped my tooth. So my story's cooler than yours, and I think
It
anybody who chips a
is.
tooth in hockey, it's cooler than mine. So
Well, and if you remember, our oldest son chipped his tooth not playing hockey, but riding a bicycle.
that's true. He did chip it around a bicycle.
Yes.
Alright, those are the minor injuries, the bruises, the soreness, the teeth, minor, sorta major, I guess, depending on how bad it is, and what about major injuries? And this is I think the first one, it's a lot more prevalent these days, you're hearing a lot more stories about it, it's getting worse and worse, concussions.
Well, I think we could really do a full episode on concussions at some point, so I don't want to spend too much time on it today. But that's absolutely probably the most common injury, what I'll call a major injury in hockey. And I think they're more prevalent is because we're better at diagnosing them now. We're better at recognizing that it's an issue and testing for it after the hit happens. And with our younger players, it can happen more because they're not checking, they're not hitting in the younger age groups. It can happen more when they fall down, hit their head on the ice, hit their head on the boards. Maybe they just have a collision with other players. And that's where the concussion can happen before you even get to that stage of actually checking in open ice.
You could see the videos of it too when they hit the ground, and you could see the fingers. They make that like the weird finger movement. The nerves, stuff is firing. Right, I've seen concussions occur personally through the fire service or people with head injuries, and you can tell it's like something's not firing right up in their brain. Now, I would recommend a good resource. Chris Nowinski, Harvard trained, educated a CTE expert. We've actually reached out to him. He gave me his email address. I'd love to get him on the show. We may be small potatoes. He actually he was a wrestler with the WWE. He got a bad concussion. He had a degree in the background and got into the studies of it. So he's primarily responsible for a lot of these stories you see about these athletes where they do the autopsies and diagnose the CTE. So that's a lot of him behind it. But Chris Nowinski is, I highly recommend looking him up. Nowinski for more information on CTE and concussions. And to Angela's point, we could probably do a whole episode on that, and I'm actually gonna reach out to his people. We're small potatoes. Maybe we get him, maybe we don't, but it's worth a shot.
Well, and I don't want to scare anybody talking about concussions. It happens. It's not something that happens every game. It's not, some kids are more prone to concussions, I think, than others. So it's one of those situations that you're going to have to kind of monitor, keep an eye on. If you figure out or you find that your kiddo is more susceptible to concussions, we've been very, very lucky, knock on wood. We've not had to deal with concussions with our kids, but we have seen other players on our teams deal with that. And there is an entire protocol of what to do medically with a concussion and how long the player would need to sit out, things along those lines. Again, that's something I think we could really dive into an entire episode on. Maybe we could get a great interview out of it. If not, we'll see what we can do and put something together in the coming months on that.
I think I recall you talked about one of, with the when you had the HBI episode, the hockey mom episode, go back and listen to it. They talk about, one of their kids got the concussion test, and it was count backwards from 100 by sevens, and all of you, and rightfully so, because I would be the same way, was like, "Yeah, I'm probably gonna fail the concussion once we get into the 80s because 'cause I'm
Right. 93. Hang on, I got to use some fingers and toes now.
those
Yeah.
games." Let's so on the topic of concussions, let's talk about the other scary thing. It's the header into the board, the hard hit. We've seen it. I've seen it. It's a big play. You're going as fast as you can. I don't know how fast skaters skate, but when they take that header into the board and they get that stinger,
Right. And that's something that, I've always talked to our kids about. We've talked to our kids about, when you go down, if you're sliding towards the boards, protect your head. If you can have the wherewithal to know where you are in space on the ice and you slide into the boards and you hit your shoulder or your hip or your back or something other than your head is going to be better than hitting your head on the boards because when that happens, it can be negative consequences.
are you telling them to tuck that head
Yeah,
up, tuck that head
tuck
down?
your head in, and I mean, again, I was a gymnast. We learned how to fall. You learn how to fall, you learn how to roll out of things, you learn how to prevent injuries in falling properly, and that's one of the things that I always try to tell our kids. If you're going into the boards, tuck your head, roll towards your shoulder to that boards or your hip or your butt or something other. I'd rather have a broken arm or a broken leg than a busted head.
I'll share a quick story. Again, if you listen with regularity, I am a first responder, I'm a firefighter, and we do have a squad paramedic that runs out of our firehouse, and we do have a rink in our district, the Northern Kentucky Ice Rink, and we had a kid that had this very thing, took a header into the wall. I was on the call, and I recall we put the kid on the spine board, stabilized his neck, and put him in the squad. And I'm back there, and we're cutting the jersey. We cut his jersey off, the scissors. We cut his skates off, and I remember grabbing his foot, and I said, "Hey, buddy, can you feel my hand?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Good." 'Cause I was scared he was paralyzed, and I remember the paramedic had called me 2 hours after the run, of course, I didn't go to the hospital. I'm in a pumper truck. She calls me 2 hours after the run. She said, "You know, I saw fear in your eyes." She goes, "I'd never seen you that scared on any run before in my life." And I asked somebody, I go, they were like, what was wrong with Michael? He looked like death warmed over." And someone said, "Well, he has a kid that plays hockey, so this affected him because it's his fear." And she goes, "I apologize. You were making me nervous back there, but now I understand what the deal was." The kid wound up being okay, and because I asked, I go, I felt awful cutting that jersey because it was one of those nice jerseys, and the coach was like, "Yeah, no big deal. He has it as a badge of honor. I think he's getting it framed or something." I was like, "Yeah." I was cringing as I was cutting it, and I remember apologizing profusely to the kid, like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." But
Have
everything
it
turned out
stitched
fine.
back together and wear it, like, as a scar?
Yeah, yeah. So a scary moment as a first responder was working on this kid and seeing that, and I was fear he was paralyzed was my biggest fear, and obviously he wasn't. He made it. I think he was back within a couple weeks. So with that, you also have collision with other players. We've seen that before. One kid goes down, both kids go down. And then I wrote this one down as more of kind of a funny one. Celebrations, like a celebratory, a pile up. You got to be careful there, right?
I mean, yeah, I think so. Thankfully, we haven't seen any major injuries through celebrations, but what happens? You hear about uh, the football player in the tunnel going out on the field, jumping up and down, getting hyped up and tears an
Roadhouse days.
ACL. Right. You hear about that. So I don't think it's unheard of, but something that we can mention, and I could definitely see the pile up after the big tournament win, somebody getting cut with a skate or
There's 20
bonking heads. Right. I mean, I think it's a distinct possibility.
I can't think of any off the top of my head hockey players, but I know NFL like Gus Frerotte. He celebrated, put his head into the wall and gave himself a concussion. I could think of the Grammatica brothers, like they were kickers, well-known kickers, and they would celebrate every extra point like they won the Super Bowl. One of them was jumping up and down and blew his ACL out. So just stupid.
Right.
Be careful in the pileups, kids.
Yeah, exactly. So, one of the other injuries that we've seen a lot of, thankfully, again, knock on wood, we haven't had to deal with personally, but teammates, other teams, we've seen a lot of broken collarbones and a couple of dislocated shoulders. I think that becomes more common as the kids are learning how to check. So, think that U14 age group, they're still growing. They don't quite have the motor abilities with their new growing bodies. And have a little bit more struggle with that and end up with some broken collarbones or dislocated shoulder.
So these dislocated, is that where they have to pop it back into place? And is that done by a coach or is that something
That
you
is not done by a coach. You
okay.
go to the hospital, you go to a doctor for that. I think that's one of those old movie tropes where, "Oh, can you pop my shoulder back in?" No, that's not a good idea.
Lethal Weapon 2. Remember Riggs?
Yeah.
He would pop it back in, he, like, slammed it up against a file cabinet.
Right. No, don't that is I am not a medical professional in any way, shape, or form, but do not try to relocate your shoulder joint on your own or do it for your child.
Henry, fight your hockey stick, dad's gonna ma do
Yeah,
something. Count to 3.
no. No, no, no. But I do think they're in that age group where they're hitting puberty, they're growing, they've got these long, lanky arms and legs that they're not quite used to yet. They're also trying to learn how to check, playing hockey on skates, the whole thing. It just becomes an awkward age group. And I think the year our oldest it was either the last year of U12, first year of U14, I think. We had, I don't know, somewhere between 4 and 6 broken collarbones on that team in the same year.
Well, I mean, with the check, you're theoretically leading with your shoulder, right? I mean,
Right.
that's the whole point of it. You're not
Yeah. Oh,
you're not using your whole body, you're throwing a shoulder into them, and that's causing these injuries.
right. And that's again, we've talked about this before. There are a lot of the leagues will do checking clinics as the kids get to that age group where they're starting to check within in their games. They do clinics to teach kids the proper techniques on that. But again, it's one of those things, it's a learning experience. And at least for our little team, we found that the downside was we had several broken collarbones in the same season.
But yeah, yes, we did. Alright, what about the old knees? Now, I'm 48 years old, and I run a lot. The knees are starting to hurt, starting to give out. What about the kids' knees? I mean, again, we're on ice, we're flying. I've seen the knee-to-knee bump. I mean, they're wearing shin pads, and they cover part of the knee, but there can still be knee injuries, especially if your leg goes one way and your knee goes the other way.
I've not seen a ton of knee injuries in youth hockey. The one that I do remember, and I actually looked this up earlier today, the MCL strain or tear seems to be most common amongst hockey players. And I think that's the way that they're skating or getting hit from the outside of the knee versus some of the other sports where you're changing directions, like soccer or basketball, football, those kinds of things. So MCL strains seem to be the most common. I've not seen a whole lot of major knee issues like you do in some of the other sports you mentioned earlier, like the torn ACL, those kinds of things. I've not seen a lot of those, but you can't say that it's not going to happen.
Do you
But
think,
especially,
is it your opinion, and maybe our the pucked up parents' opinion, that the reason for that is because unlike football or basketball, we're on ice, it's easier to make that transition, to make that turn,
yes,
to make that cut, to switch direction, whereas on a football field or a basketball court, you're working more with friction, and you're on a basketball court, your sneakers sticking to that hardwood, and you're trying to switch over to defense.
right. And at least in my non-medical opinion, and obviously we've done no scientific research on this, but it seems to make sense to me that that would be the case because, like you mentioned, in basketball, you plant your foot on that hardwood and you're pushing quickly in a different direction. Whereas if you're on ice, you're on skates, and even when you're changing direction quickly, you kind of have that skid, or when they're making snow with that hockey stop, you see that snow pop up. That's kind of relieving that friction that you mentioned. So I think that's entirely possible. And that may be one of the reasons why you don't see a ton of knee injuries in especially youth hockey. The other thing is the young kids who are still growing, those muscles and tendons aren't quite fully developed and are not quite as tight. So you don't see as many tears in the younger kids as you do in older teenagers or adults.
Right, so the same reason, Henry could fall out of a tree, jump right up and go ride his bike, whereas if I sneeze wrong, I'm sore for a week. It's
Similar situation.
so is the same reason, because the next one I would think about, like, we're talking like the hip flexor, the stuff like that. Same reason there, not a lot of injury. No, we don't, again, our unprofessional opinion here, but we're not seeing as many of those injuries. I think maybe for the same reason, because your lower body, you're gliding, you're skating, you're not making that surface to surface contact. Or you're still making surface to surface contact, but not to the degree that you are playing football or baseball or even basketball.
I think that's part of it, but I do, at least again in my unscientific research of Google and a few websites, and also my own hip injury, is that hip injuries are a little bit more common in hockey players because of the skating. If you think about running, your hip joint is just going forwards and backwards, right? But if you're skating, that hip joint's going out to the side versus forwards and backwards. So it's a different motion, which can cause more of those strains in the hip flexors and the groin, that sort of situation. And actually, the hip injury that I had, which was a labral tear or an impingement, is also pretty common amongst hockey players for that reason, in that kind of side to side movement versus that forward backwards movement.
Angela got her labral tear from jumping on a trampoline with a
No, it was not a trampoline injury.
I remember Angela was a marathon runner, so the she tore it via running.
Well, here's the funny statistic on that particular injury. So, hip labral tears and impingements are incredibly common amongst hockey players, baseball slash softball players, and gymnasts. So, I did two of those three sports.
You did 2 of those 3 sports and then took up running, and it was like, "Ah, I've had
It
enough."
was like, yeah, no, this isn't gonna work. So, anyways, I that's something that I think you'll see again, not with the young players, but as they get to be teenagers. I know particularly goalies have a lot of that groin and hip flexor type of injury or strains because of the way they do butterfly, how they go down to block shots can cause some of those injuries.
Alright, let's get to another one we're familiar with, the old broken bone. Specifically, the wrist seems very common.
Yes. Again, remember when I talked about learning to fall? And just a few minutes ago, when you learn to fall, when you learn to fall in gymnastics, you learn to fall and not put your arm behind you, because when you put your arm behind you when you fall, as you can easily break a wrist, break an arm.
Confession time, a softball game, I slipped on a home plate. It was a late night game, there was a little layer of dew on the plate, and I jumped over someone to get to home, I slipped, and went to catch myself at the old left arm and snap, broke my wrist in a few places. And our own son, Angela, you want to share the story of Sam's broken wrist? Because this happened to us. We dealt with this. I can't remember how he injured it specifically. Did he know or do we know the story?
He thinks it was when he went into the boards. He just kinda went into the boards wrong with it, with his arm, probably catching himself on the boards, and that's where those wrist and lower arm injuries happen, is trying to catch yourself.
Uh,
Again, if it's between the arm and the head, I'll take a broken arm over the head any day. But Sam actually was playing the game. It was like, my wrist hurts a little bit. Finished the game. The next day, we iced it afterwards. And the next day, my wrist still kind of hurts, but he played the next day. And I think it was another 2 days later, we finally took him and had it X-rayed.
this,
And
like,
yeah, it was broken.
Hucked Up Parent Fail by Michael and Angela. Number 1, we weren't there. We weren't on the trip. This
Right.
Sam was with, goalie mom, Shauna, who you've heard on the show a couple of times, and he had wrist and she I think they told us, and
Oh,
he
yeah, she called me, we had conversations about it. We were like, "Oh, it's probably just strained, just ice it, you'll be alright."
I
It was
remember
not clearly deformed or anything, and it
we're
was a
asking,
pretty minor
remember
minor break.
Mighty Ducks, Adam Banks, where he couldn't rotate the stick, so Bombay's like, "Yeah, you're injured." I was like, "Can he rotate the stick? Can he do that?" Like, "That's medical." I'm getting medical advice from Mighty Ducks. And then he came home and for, 2 days, Angela and I kinda kicked it around like, "Hey, he's fine. He's just strained a little bit." And then finally I don't know at what point we were like, "All right, maybe we should go get an X-ray." I think Angela might have pushed on it a few times, and the pain was a little harder when he pushed on it, so we made it
Yeah.
to the X-ray. Again, if you listen with any regularity, we know we had a scare with Henry earlier in the summer with, roller hockey. Based on our experience with the older one, we took him to get X-rayed. It was just a strain or something like that. At least that's what, not didn't give a crap doctor said, and he everything turned out to be fine.
Right. So, I mean, it happens. I'll go back to I'd rather have a broken wrist, broken leg, broken ankle over a head injury any day. It happens. It's going to happen with any sort of falls, contact sports. Those things are going to happen. And unfortunately, it happens, but it also could lead to a great story one day.
But out of all the bones, it seems like the wrist is the most popular. I say popular again, with the popular, the wrist is the most common
Common.
bone being broken in hockey, at least from our viewpoint. So
Well, between the wrist and the collarbones, I would go with the biggest one.
right, right. So let's get to maybe not an injury, but still impactful illness or fatigue. So this is another reason why your kid can't play. We'll call it an injury. You're sick. You're fatigued. What do we got there?
So dehydration can be one of the big ones, especially with hockey. It's in the winter time. Yeah, they're getting hot out on the ice, but maybe they're not drinking as much fluids as they should be, especially during a tournament. I know this happened a few times with our oldest during tournaments. He would be playing hard during games, couple of games during the day. The kids are out running around at the hotel or doing some sort of activity or whatever, and he would get really lightheaded and or get a really bad headache, and it was almost always due to dehydration. So make sure you're keeping those kiddos hydrated. Obviously, water bottle on the bench. Lots of teams do Gatorades or Powerades or whatever after the game. Get a little bit of those electrolytes back in the system. But dehydration's one to look out for sure.
I mean, food can cause similar symptoms, right? Lack of
Right.
lack of nourishment.
Right. So those early morning games, our kids aren't really big breakfast eaters. They don't want to eat a lot of breakfast. But if you're going to go play a game at 7 a.m. and you haven't eaten since dinner the night before, your body doesn't have the fuel that it needs to play that game. You're going to have to get some sort of fuel into them so that you avoid that low energy, lightheaded, dizzy, queasy, low blood sugar situation.
This is a problem in our family. The early games, early practices, getting the kids, at least the 12-year-old to do this. Our oldest seems like he has no problem eating, but it happened Saturday. He had the coach's clinic and it was at 8:30. And I said, buddy, grab a granola bar with your water. And he got out of the car, ran into the rink, and I look over at the car seat, the not car seat, just the seat, and there's the granola bar in its wrapper. He didn't need anything. I'm like, damn it. He's gonna get fatigued out there, and then, of course, if they don't get fatigued, they're gonna come off the ice ravenous, and we talked about this in our food episode.
Right. The first thing you hear as soon as they walk off the ice is, "I'm hungry. What are we going to eat?"
Hey, Angela, You want a salad from Taco Bell or any lettuce from Taco Bell?
No,
That leads us to our next one, viruses. This is
no.
popular in the news right now. People are, I got a buddy in Tennessee, he got hit with it. The old stomach bug, the flu. We did this 6 years ago with COVID. So, this has the ability because our kids are together, they're in the locker room, they're on the bench together, they're palling about. Uh,
They're probably drinking each other's water.
Guarantee they're drinking each other's water. The bug. What do you think about the virus and what it does to a team?
Yeah, unfortunately, it spreads so quickly, amongst the team. If one kid goes down with some sort of, flu or stomach bug, it's not gonna be uncommon to have 2 or 3 more go down with that same bug. And sometimes the parents too, you never know. But yeah, definitely be careful around that. If one of the kids gets sick, you're probably gonna have more. If your kid's sick, keep them home. You don't wanna pass
Patient
the
zero.
flu or the stomach bug amongst the rest of the team if you can prevent it. But there are those times that your kid seems fine and then they come home and they wake up the next morning and you're like, "Oh, man, they've got the flu or whatever and they were just at practice last night." That's when you wanna warn everybody else what's going on.
I know I rail against the team chat, but this is where this is important because you get that text, "Hey, little Johnny has got the flu," and then you're looking up from your phone at your kid going, did he just sniffle? Oh, shit. And that's important.
Yeah.
If your kid gets the flu or gets any type of, like, virus or anything, you need HIPAA throw HIPAA out the door. You need to share it with the hockey team, just especially if they were exposed around it. And that leads to the next thing of we have a tournament this weekend. We have a game this weekend. So, now we're down players or we forfeit. So
Right. So you end up with a short bench or with canceled games. This happened a lot in that, especially the first COVID season, which would have been we started playing in kind of late 2020. We played a handful of games, and we started playing a little more in 2021, and that was happening a lot. That was also during the quarantine. Like if you had been exposed, then you had to quarantine for a certain time period. And there were times that we were trying to get some games in, but had some really short benches. And we've seen that happen with flu or stomach bug with other teams as well.
and not only that, you have all of our forwards. Oh crap, all of them had the virus, all of them had the stomach virus. So now Henry, who plays defense, has to be a forward. Or so, again with the defense, now you got the forwards playing defense. So they're playing weird positions because half the team is sick. I think we make jokes on the chat. It's like, oh man, Cincinnati Cyclones took a beating this weekend. The flu scored 8, and we scored 6.
Right.
Just kicked our
Yeah.
ass weekend in the tournament.
And I can only think of one time where we had a situation where we didn't have a normal goalie. Most of our teams carried 2 goalies, and we ended up having to put somebody in net that doesn't normally play goalie, and that was not a pretty situation.
All right, let's get out of the illness. I hope everybody's safe, especially with the lettuce thing going around right now, which is really wild. Back to the injuries, back to the physical injuries. Players down on the ice, part of the game. Going to happen, not to the extent of the World Cup, but the players on the ice. Angela, I know you got a lot of opinions on this. I respect every one of them. Share it with our listeners.
So, my message to our kids is if you can get up and get off the ice, then do it. If you get hurt or injured in a game and you can get off the ice, get off the ice. What we want to try to avoid is the stoppage of the game. But if you are injured to the point, if the kiddo's injured to the point where they can't get up and get off the ice or they're not sure, then the ref's going to blow the whistle and a coach is going to come out and check on the player.
Yeah, certain
Um,
like the neck, the header into the boards, they should
yeah,
lay there because you're damaging the neck. But
right.
there's been a lot where we've seen our kids pop right up and skate off, and it's because Angela puts this mentality in their head, "If you're not injured, get off." And that goes to the hockey toughness of showing them that they're, no fear, badass, "I'm gonna get back in the game." And I've seen it. I've seen our kids take hits. Sam took a puck off the head once and skated over, and I saw him on the bench wincing in pain. The helmet was off, and, he's sat out a few shifts, but he didn't lay on the ice. He popped right up, which I mean, I was proud of it.
Right. But then you've got some kids on that we've seen on teams who are the ones who, if there's any sort of injury, they always go down. You can almost count on if that kid hits the ice that they're going to stay there until the whistle blows. So I think you call that the kid who cries wolf.
That's also the kid that majored in drama. They're in drama school.
Yes.
They're milking it for all it's worth. Yeah, you have that kid, and the parents know, the parents of the team know, the parents of the opposing team may know that kid is gonna that's your as close as you're gonna get to a World Cup flopping kid or a LeBron James. Sorry, LeBron fans, a flopper. And that's not good for the kid because when he does get injured, like seriously, it's the boy who cried wolf. You're not gonna believe him. And maybe the coaches don't believe him as much. And that's where a problem is. So yeah, we have opinions on that.
It's a balancing act of having the kids understand the difference between, "Ouch, that hurt, I can skate off," and, "Ouch, that hurt, I need medical attention,"
We
kinda
had
thing.
Henry was 8 years old. I think he was eight, Angela, playing in that
Yeah,
summer
he was young.
video of this, and this kid rolled him over, just ran him over, and Henry dead fished across the ice, spread eagle, arms out like a star, and
Like
slid
a dead fish.
like 20 yards across the ice. Everybody was freaking out because it looked like it, and I think, Angela, you asked him why he did that, and he said,
Yeah, so I thought he was out cold. The way he went down and just was like a dead fish sliding across the ice, I thought he was knocked out cold. So he wasn't. The coach, of course, runs out there because the coach also thought he was knocked out cold, and he pops up and he's perfectly fine. So after the game, after I'd had a heart attack and was already searching where the nearest hospital was, after the game, I asked him, I'm like, "Why did you do that?" He goes, "I was just enjoying the ride." So he got hit, knocked down, and was sliding across the ice, and he was just going for a ride.
eh,
Meanwhile, I was having a heart attack, as was every other parent in the stands.
right, let me expand on that. The parents running down, the coaches are going to the ice to help the kid. It's the drama kid. It's not the drama kid. What's your take on the parents bullying their way on the, I want to say bullying, making their way to the ice? Okay,
I
not okay to the extent of the injury. What do you think?
I think it depends on the injury. I think you need to let the coaches assess and the medical professionals assess what's going on. I think we're going to get into this in a bit, but we've had the fortune of having quite a few medical professionals amongst the parents of our teams who can assess injuries. And I think it's one of those things you kind of have to sit and watch. And if it's something major, yeah, you need to go deal with it. But if it's something really minor, let the coach and the kids figure it out.
When I run over on a panic and like a parent, when I do that? When the
When,
s when the stick gets broke, I'm like, "No, God, dear God, no, no.
trying to tape the stick back together rather than stitch up the kid.
Tell me it's okay, coach. The warranty just ran out 2 days ago."
Jeez, man.
And on top of that, all right, the parents. Now, the players on the ice, let's talk about them. The opposing players and your team. Some kids take a knee. Some kids take a knee and scoot their butts over to the bench to get coaching from the coach. What's your opinion on that? It seems like we're really all over the place when it comes to this. Very young kids, it seems like everybody takes a knee. As we got older, it seems like, all right, the varsity team's going to skate over to the bench and get instructions for the next play while they assess the child on the ice. And parents get angry if you don't take a knee.
Yeah, I think it's great that the little ones are all taking a knee. I think it shows respect for the other players. I kind of waver back and forth as they get older. I think it really again depends on the situation. If it's a situation where a player is seriously injured, I think we need to kind of take that knee and have that respect. But if it's the third or fourth time the same kid's gone down during the game and they've been back out on the ice the next shift every time, then maybe it's time for a little coaching. That's one of those difficult calls,
I'm not taking a
and
knee.
and I think it's very situational.
Johnny's been down 3 times this game. I'm not kneeing again. We're done with this.
I mean, I'm not going to put any hard and fast rules on it, but I think it's situational, and you need to kind of respect the other team, respect the player that's down, but at the same time have situational awareness.
Of course, when they get up, you give the old stick tap if you're a player, and
Right,
the parents do the little "Buddy's okay" applause. Now
right,
let's briefly I wanna briefly do this because this is not youth hockey players. This is the non-players, and there's injuries that happen there. You have, we talked with our ref a couple weeks ago, like getting hit by the puck, or of course, the over embarrassing ref falls on his ass.
right. I mean, that happens. Again, we talked to Jeremy about that a few weeks ago. The most embarrassing thing that can happen to a ref is falling in open ice. But yeah, they're going to get nailed with a puck. They're going to get hit with a stick. It happens.
Same for coaches. Coaches are the same way. I know
Hmm.
a few times cleared the puck, and the puck has gone towards the coach, and the coach is like, "All right, I'm kinda taking that personal right now." I think Sam or Henry did it twice, once to one coach, where the coach is like, "Hey, you really gotta stop doing that, buddy, because they could get injured." And
Right.
players can get injured on the bench too. And
Well, and I was gonna say that's why when a player is not playing and they're either on the bench in their warm-ups or their street clothes or whatever, they're required to wear a helmet because of that situation.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And then, of course, us fans, us parents, and, kids in the stands, you know what? Angel's had a lot to drink. I mean, she's at the rink. She's had too many of those, gummies that Shauna makes that are soaked in alcohol, and those bleachers are aluminum. They're cold, a little bit of maybe a little moisture on them. Whoops, she slips and falls. So,
Well, let's just
watch out.
say I've never been that drunk at an ice rink, number 1, but
Yeah,
yes, we have seen fans fall in the bleachers. We've seen kids fall in the bleachers. We've seen some pretty wonky bleachers that you probably shouldn't sit or stand on because they're not real stable, and, you could fall whether you've been drinking or not.
so just be safe at the rink, and grandparents too. That's another thing. You get some of
Yes.
these grandparents that are super elderly, and those rinks are not conducive to old people. So yeah, everybody be careful. Watch what you drink. If you drink a lot, maybe sit on the lowest bleacher you can. Don't be climbing up those bleachers, and don't jog up them. Use the stairs. Use the handrail. Take care of yourself, please. Holy cow, that's a lot of injuries. Let's get to Are We There Yet? And preventative measures, what we do as parents, what we do as hockey organizations to mitigate accidents, injuries, and to take care of them if they do happen.
So, of course, we've all signed up for USA Hockey, all of our leagues, all of the organizations that we play with, they have you sign a ton of waivers. There's a reason for that, but there's also a ton of rules around, as we mentioned before, equipment, mouth guards, neck guards, helmets, cages, no checking. So these organizations, even though they're having you sign these waivers, are really taking safety precautions seriously and requiring players to do certain things to prevent injuries.
I had to get a reality check at the last practice. I was curious, when do they start checking? And it's 14. Obviously, so kids are more developing under 14. Clearly, you don't want little kids hitting each other. Angela brought it up earlier. They have check clinics. They're going to show your kid how to properly check. It's not something that is just, yeah, hey, get out there and start hitting people. They're going to show you how to hit and take a hit properly.
Right, right. So I think that's really, really important. Again, net guards, I just mentioned that. That's something that is a newer requirement through USA Hockey. I think that's been a requirement in Canada for quite some time. But those net guards are providing an extra layer of protection. Same thing with the mouth guards. Helmets, you can do some Google research on hockey helmets, and there are some actual scientific studies out there on some helmets are better than others. And you can do your research and make your decision on purchasing a helmet based on some of that science. Some of those helmets are better at preventing concussions than others.
And pretty much all the hockey gear is out there to protect you. Shout out to the cup for all you fellas out there protecting the old family jewels. You want grandkids, don't you? You got a little boy out there and you want grandkids? But make sure he's wearing his cup.
Yeah, that's a good one for sure. So yeah, all of those things are there to try to prevent injuries and keep the sport as safe as possible.
Let's talk about us as parents. First aid kit, should you have one? Do we have one? What are you putting in the first aid kit?
Well, I think most of the time the individual rinks are going to have first aid kits. I think a lot of coaches carry first aid kits, and they're going to have your basics, your ice packs, your bandages, band-aids, tape, ibuprofen, acetaminophen, those kinds of things. They're also going to have that medical info that you filled out when you were signing up for the league.
And would you recommend, I mean, as a parent, especially if you're just skating for the hell of it or you're just at a practice, maybe pack your own, have your own ready, have it ready to go with those things that Angela had pointed out. Also, gloves, PPE, take care of yourself. You don't want blood all over,
Yes.
especially if you're working on somebody else's kid or somebody
Right.
just took a header off the bleacher because they had a few too many more lights. Not a bad idea to keep one. We keep first aid kits in our vehicles. That's where we keep them.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, we have basic first aid kits in our vehicles. I don't think it's something that I would carry into the rink on a daily basis because, again, I think most of those rinks, the associations, coaches are gonna have that part covered. But having some basic first aid skills is always a good idea just for life in general.
And then what do you see hanging in every rink now? I mean, these are huge these days.
Right, you've got defibrillators everywhere. I think that's a big one that you're gonna see if you're unfamiliar with what that is. That's a device that can help a lay person restart someone's heart or get it back to the proper electrical pulses that it needs.
Yeah, not just layperson. We use them in the fire service, and they are very intuitive. You slap the stickers on the chest, and you turn it on, and the little voice tells you, "Hey, shock advised," and you hit the
Right.
button. And you stand. It's telling you everything you need to do to administer CPR to a patient. I don't wanna say they're dummy proof, but they are damn good, and they instruct you. No shock needed, shock advised. It tells you everything you need to know, and especially when emergency professionals do get on scene, it gives them a good readout of what's been going on, how many shocks were administered. They can plug their own devices right into the stickers that you're putting on there, from the machine that's at the rink. And also, let's talk about that. On at the rink, Angela, have you ever seen trainers, EMTs available at tournaments? I know I have.
Yeah, definitely at tournaments, and I think some of the probably larger rinks, larger associations may have that an athletic trainer or EMT on staff, but definitely those big tournaments, state tournaments, national tournaments, some of those big CCM tournaments that bring in and teams all across the country typically have some sort of athletic trainer or EMT on staff at the rink. So you're going to see that, and as a again, as a layperson, as a parent, you don't need to get involved, but if you don't have access to that, it's good to just kind of be aware of what's going on, be aware of your surroundings, and be ready for hopefully something that you don't want to happen, and hopefully it doesn't happen.
We talk about our hockey family. We talk about the other hockey parents. Angela, you alluded to it earlier. Great resource. I'll say it. Hockey's a rich person sport. It's known to be a rich person sport. Now, that's not to say that us middle class people will have kids in hockey, but a lot of those people have medical training. A lot of doctors. I'm not wrong here, am I, Angela? I mean,
No.
I think one team had a ton. How many did we have medical professionals that were parents?
I would say we had at least 5 to 6 doctors on the parent roster, plus a couple of nurses, maybe a physical therapist, and obviously at least one first responder, maybe more.
Yeah, and even if you don't have any on your team and something happens during a game, it's like you go to a room where you see on an airplane. Hey, any doctors around here or nurses? And somebody raises their hand and we'll go help out.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common, and I think the hockey parents are really willing to help out when something bad happens or when medical attention is needed. Parents are ready to help out. Like I said, we were very, very lucky to have those doctor parents on our team, and not only were they checking in on players from our team, they would check in on players from the other team if need be as well. So definitely check who's in the stands.
Yeah, who's going to be the parent to run outside to call 911 because cell service sucks in a rink?
Right.
And
Well, that would be me, and I'll let the medical professionals handle the rest.
and then as a parent, we can't recommend this enough. Get CPR certified. It's not that difficult. CPR is not as difficult as it used to be. When we came up, again, I'm 48. I've been in the fire service for 30 years. You were doing the compressions, you were doing the breasts, you had the stupid pocket mask. Anymore, you don't do the breast. They're pretty much gone away. But check your local library, check your local fire department. A lot of them offer it but for free as a free service. They would probably offer it to your organization to get you CPR certified.
Yeah,
Angela,
especially the coaches. I think that might be a requirement
it's
for some of the USA hockey coaching, and but it's just as a parent, it's just a good life skill, something to know, something to have in your back pocket. Hopefully, you never need it, but if you happen to, then it's good to have that information.
not hockey, but Angela and I actually, it happened to us. We were at a softball game and a gentleman had a heart attack. Somebody knew I was a firefighter, came down. Our first baseman was a doctor. And so she outranked me, obviously so, but I was like, I got a doctor right here. We ran up, administered CPR to the gentleman. Sadly, he didn't make it. It was a widowmaker type heart attack where he was dead when he hit the ground. But it was a situation where emergency skills came out and that CPR I had trained for, it went into use. So get CPR certified. If not, if your kids don't even play hockey, as a parent, you should be
It
CPR certified.
right. It's just a general good life skill. The other thing that we wanted to mention here too, especially your home rink, know where your medical facilities are around your home rink for God forbid something does happen. Know where you're going and know where you can get that attention if it's something that you need to take a child, a parent, somebody to the hospital. Know where you are, know where your closest facility is. Obviously, if it's an emergency, call 911. We are not medical professionals, and that's, I think, just general good information.
Yep, know where the hospitals are, know where the trauma centers are. Again, even if it's something as simple as you're in Detroit and you're at a rink and your kid snaps his wrist, you're not gonna call an ambulance for that. You're probably just gonna take him to a hospital. Just like you do when you go to a restaurant, or at least I do, or a crowded place, you're looking at where the exits are. Same thing. When you go to a location, know where the hospitals are, know where the fire if you see a firehouse, make a mental note. Just simple stuff like that's gonna help out. Again, this stuff is rarely happens, but it still does happen occasionally.
It does. And, you kind of have to think of this in terms of your entire life. You always be prepared for the worst, be prepared for an emergency, whether it's your kid playing hockey or something around the house, whether it's a natural disaster or whatever. Just always kind of have some preparedness and be ready. Not that we want any of these things to happen, and hopefully none of it happens, but at least have some idea of what you're going to do in a situation.
All right, let's steer it back to our hockey player. Oh, damn it. My kid got injured. Now, how are they going to miss games? Do you want them to miss games? Do you want them to miss practices? Or am I a sports? I'm a sports dad. Rub dirt on it. Get back out there. Let me. Or I'm setting that shoulder back in so he can go play the third period. Angela, what should we do on that?
Follow the recommendation of your medical professionals. Again, we are not medical professionals. Hopefully, if you do have an injury related to hockey or just an injury in general, and you don't know if your player should get back out on the ice, talk to the medical professionals. Depending on the situation, depending on the injury, the illness, the doc may say, yeah, you need to sit a week, or you know what? Let's cast up that arm and go back out there. That's what we had. That was the experience that we had when our son broke his wrist. The doctor said, "Do you want to play hockey or do you want to wear a splint and not play hockey?" And our son was like, "Give me a cast. I want to play hockey."
I was
And
I was
yeah,
flabbergasted that he was allowed to play hockey with a broken wrist, but his shot was horrible because he couldn't make that snapshot, but he plays defense, so I'm curious if that was a forward or a known shooter, would they have played? I don't know.
I think that's an individual decision. The doctor was, comfortable with him playing as long as he had that cast on and things weren't moving around. But I think that's an individual decision. Our son was ready to play. Some players may be a little more timid and be more fearful of re-injury or other injury. So you have
But
to take that into consideration too.
I had to sit him down, and any dads out there from the '80s like I was like, "Boy, don't you Cowboy Bob Orton anybody." Now, Cowboy Bob Orton was a WWF wrestler who always wore a hard cast, and he used that cast as a weapon. And Sam was out there with a cast, and I'm like, "Do not use that cast as a weapon and take it up somebody's head." He did have to cut up a glove to make it fit, but, for the most part, the cast was not used as a blunt object to take out other kids.
No, and it was fine. Again, we let the doctor make that determination. Yeah, you can play if you want to. And then he was what, 16, 17 at the time, so we can have that conversation with him. If you've got younger ones, you may need to talk about that with the other parent, with a coach, and figure out what makes the best sense for your player. But sometimes rest is really good, especially if it's a minor injury or an illness. Let the kiddo rest. Don't force them to go to practice, and let them rest, let them recover, and then they'll come back ready to play in a week or whatever the recommendation may be.
This is where in our family, at least for our 2 boys, we're the bad guys here. It's like, "Hey, man, you're sick. You can't be going to that game," or, "Hey, that knee, it's not worthy of going to the doctor or the emergency room. Let's give it a few days. Let's not play or practice and let it heal up." And they don't take that well, but you are looking out for their best interest. You gotta let the body heal. Rushing back, especially if you have a deep bruise or something's not right, or they're ill, you may just make it worse. And now you are going to the hospital. Now you are having to go to the doctor, where a few days of rest and relaxation would allow that body part to heal.
Right. So that gets to the toughness versus stupidity. You got to balance that out and walk that fine line. Yeah, we want our kids to be tough, but we also don't want to do something dumb, put them in harm's way. So definitely take the advice of those medical professionals, and if the advice is sit and rest, or resting for a couple of days isn't going to make or break anybody's season. So make sure you're in communication with the coaches, with the medical professionals, with your player, and figure out what's going to work best for them.
And look at you. You just got a free weekend because you're not making that tournament up in Detroit. Or we talked about this. The kid, if they're injured, not ill, injured, that they can go support the team, sit on the bench,
Right.
that helmet on. They're going to make you put a helmet on, but you can sit on the bench injured and be there for your team, help out. You can talk with them, help essentially coach the team.
Right, or work the penalty box, or just be there as moral support and still be part of the team even though you may be injured. I know that obviously happened the year that I mentioned earlier where we had 5 or 6 kids with broken collarbones that year for a variety of different games. We had somebody on the bench in a helmet there for moral support, supporting the team, being part of the team, even though they weren't able to play.
Is there a fine line? Toughness versus stupidity?
I think there is. And again, it's situational. You have to pay attention to what the situation is and try to make the best decisions with as much information as possible from the medical professionals, from the coaches, from your own knowledge of your kid.
This was great. This was actually explored in my favorite hockey show, Shoresy, where his quote was, "Go until you can't go no more." That's what he would do. And then at one point, he got a concussion, and he's in the locker room, and they're telling him, "Go till you can't go no more." And he goes, "I can't go." He basically said, My body's had enough." He had a concussion. He's like, "I can't go." And it was a sad, moving part of the show, but it was the reality of I took a bad hit, and it would be stupid to get back out there and risk my health to finish this game out.
Right. Again, that's what I mean by it's situational. You've got to kind of look at the big picture and make decisions based on that.
All right, life moves pretty fast. Angela, that was a lot, but I think there's so much more we could talk about with injuries because there's so many types of injuries, so much in depth. We can go on certain injuries, like we said, with concussions, with broken bones. So I think there's more substance to this conversation, maybe a few more episodes in it. But what are your reflections on injuries in general?
Well, it hockey is a dangerous sport, but don't let that limit your player's involvement. Don't let that scare you. Every sport's dangerous in its own way. Injuries can happen anywhere. Accidents and injuries can happen at your home. They can happen in your driveway. They can happen really just anywhere. So I think just keep that in mind. Do your due diligence with the safety precautions, with the equipment, being smart, learning how to fall, all of those kinds of things. But I will say sometimes those injuries make for great stories later. We were actually at the graduation party and the boys were the hockey players were watching some clips of some games and one of the boys goes, "I think that's the game I broke my collarbone," and was actually trying to, I think, decide if that was the game and if that was the play where that happened. And that was probably 5 or 6 years ago. But still, it's one of those things that's part of childhood, I think, is injuries and broken bones and those kinds of things. So don't let that scare you away from what can be a great experience in playing hockey.
Great reflection, and the scars tell stories. Your chipped tooth has a stupid story behind it. I have a scar on my hand from being shoved in a creek. They're gonna tell stories, and they're gonna share these stories just like you said with the broken collarbone video clip that I didn't know I had actually popped in that video feed. So, let's talk about our, tip of the week. What's your tip?
Again, I'm going to go back to be cautious, but have fun. We talked a lot about precautions, things that you can do generally, knowing CPR, knowing where the hospital is, making sure that your location, your rink has some sort of first aid kit, those kinds of things. Be cautious, but have fun. Don't lose the fun in your cautiousness. There's still a lot of fun to be had, but be prepared and don't freak out if something happens.
And mine is, I don't wanna say know when to call it quits, but I've seen posts. One in particular where a kid is like, "Oh, my kid got his 4th concussion," and as a dad, I'm like, "Yeah, it would be time to hang it up." Just if your kid is repeatedly injured, it's gonna damage your body long term, maybe it's time to talk to a medical professional and see if this sport is meant for you. I know it sucks, I know it's awful, but if your kid's getting concussed week in and week out, you're not helping them in the long run. So you're doing more damage than good. Hockey is an awesome sport, but it's also a dangerous sport. Be careful, be safe, and make sure you take care of your kids and take care of the other kids.
Right. I 100% agree with that.
Angela, let's get to our outro.
Well, I appreciate everyone listening. I hope no one has to deal with the injuries. Knock on wood, do whatever your superstition is to wish yourself and your players some luck. If you could, please leave us a comment. Give us a 5-star review. Leave us some sort of questions on whatever platform you're listening on. It helps other listeners find us.
And hey, if your kid does break his wrist and gets one of those casts, sign it. Put Pucked Up Parents on there. Give us some free advertisement. Please tag your kid's cast with a Pucked Up Parents with a Sharpie marker if you don't mind.
Or
Remember,
we can send them a sticker.
oh, yeah, you can put a sticker on their little cast. Remember to like, listen, follow, and share. Please share with your organization, share with your rink. We're here to help. We're going to start ramping things up in about a month. We're going to get back into hockey. So for the meantime, we're going to do some more interviews, do a couple more special episodes. We're here to help you. We have lots of topics, so go back and listen to the old episodes. Join us for this fun youth hockey ride. Keep your stick on the ice. We're all in this together. Goodbye.
Up before dawn, can't feel my face. Coffee spilling all over the place. Forgot the sticks, we're turning around. Another weekend and some hockey